Welcome to our Crumbles with mildly amused Milksnake, where I overshare my thoughts and opinions on randomly chosen topics over the footage of our gameplay to justify spending hours in game being unproductive. And today's topic is making choices, but mostly how to not regret them. Because which one of us haven't struggled with that at some point? While we do treasure ourselves as a society where our choices are unrestrained to the maximum practical degree, making decisions about our future, the ones that are important and those completely inconsequential alike, can be extremely daunting for us. And the more choices you have, statistically, the higher likelihood that you won't enjoy your final choice as much. There were even experiments that proved that, at least in consumer studies, you might even end up stalling the point at which you have to make the decision, or not make one at all. But in the end, throwing yourself into anxious ruminations on whether or not you're making the best choice, or avoiding to make the choice altogether, is really impractical and mentally exhausting. Makes me wonder if this world of seemingly endless paths for us to take, this freedom of choice, isn't indirectly causing us strife that not many societies before us had ever experienced. Is this perhaps one part of the factors that contribute to the infamous mental health crisis in Western societies? Could it be that having too many options to pick from in every aspect of our lives wears down our psyche, causing us to be less satisfied with the choices we eventually end up making? That certainly is a theory, but many of us maybe don't want to consider it, because isn't being stifled objectively worse than being stuck in analysis paralysis? Or perhaps both are equally infuriating for our brains, and it's just a human condition to be slowly tired out by our lives. That's entirely possible too. But I am not nearly educated enough on mental health and psychiatrics to really make that judgment. I'll just ramble on how I think we can improve our decision-making process, so make of it what you will. There are, after all, brain tricks that I know of that can help lessen the burden that is decision-making without depriving one of their agency. There has been various ways I personally used to lessen the stress or pressure related to choices I faced. One of them, although not a very mature one since I mostly used it in adolescence, was consciously or subconsciously minimizing the impact of the pending decisions. Trying to think of reasons why I might as well make it a coin flip. Doesn't matter which high school I apply to, no one cares about that in adulthood, and if I'm good at exams, I'll get to whatever uni I want to anyways. Doesn't matter what I wear today, I don't want to hang out with fashion nitpickers anyways. Doesn't even matter what I'll have for breakfast, it's all calories and I'm young and healthy. It was quite a carefree state of mind, but also you could say bit irresponsible way of approaching choices. Though I wouldn't entirely discard it either, as in the end, I've landed in a good place in life. Sure, I went to a high school that wasn't very prestigious, but I ended up getting a scholarship to my university of choice after winning some countrywide competition. Though thinking back on it, that trade competition made me not even question whether or not to take the major I competed for, and I ended up acquiring an undergrad engineering degree in trade I didn't want to dedicate my future to, after getting to know the ins and outs of that industry. So, how would I say that I wasted my time a little bit? Also, I never developed a sense of fashion. Though, that one I still consider a neutral impact on my life. I stand by my previous opinion and I still don't want to hang out with fashion nitpickers. And there are plenty of cool people to hang out with who aren't triggered by clashing colors. But I certainly have to watch my nutrient intake more now that my juvenile super regen powers faded off. I still hate indecision though. At some point of my life, I decided that sometimes the best thing you can do is to just make a decision and follow the path it takes you on, without looking back. To always be in the present or the future with my planning brain, never in the past. And since you can't change the past, thinking what you could have done differently is just ruining your mood in the present. So why do that? If you had a semi-coherent reason to take the path you're on now, accept it. It went that way because it had to at the time. It made sense back then. And again, it already happened. Even if you're in the bad place right now because of that decision, look for a way out of the hole, not for ways you could have avoided getting into it in the first place. But hold on. Doesn't that sound irresponsible too? Isn't analyzing what we could have done different crucial for learning? Well, yes, but also no. If you can analyze it in a way of I made decision X for following reason, looking back on it, it was a stupid reasoning and I should avoid letting similar lines of reasoning guide my decisions moving forward. It'll be better to take the factors I missed from that decision into consideration next time I'm in a similar situation. Then yes, that is productive and you actually learn from it. You also acknowledge that you have more experience now and you're capable of making better decisions in the future instead of internalizing the perception of yourself as a bad decision maker, quote unquote. But if analyzing your past decision is more like, I wish I have done this thing differently. If I picked this other choice, I wouldn't be here today. Or perhaps that other choice, that would have led me to going places by now. That is just straight up rumination. The only thing you're learning from that is that other choices you made are likely to be more correct by process of elimination. But you're not reflecting on what led you to making the bad choice. You also risk internalizing the perception that you're stupid and make bad choices. Plus, you can never truly know that the other choices you've had in the past would have led to better outcomes in the present. That is just an assumption. In reality, you never actually know. You didn't take those paths, so they are forever lost. Perhaps you're really messed up and missed out on some glorious alternate present, or perhaps you've made the best of the choices that you've been dealt by the universe. And if it still sucks, the other choices might have sucked more. That reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen Stargate SG-1 TV series. It's a sci-fi, and in one of its episodes there was quite intriguing plotline where they find a device that can lead to alternate universes. Now, the quote-unquote original timeline of the show was in fact sucking quite a lot, with evil aliens that are technologically superior having an agenda to enslave humanity after humanity discovered them and interfered with their inhumane practices. Now, the cast in that timeline made a lot of questionable decisions, even ones that were guided by anything but good military discipline. It turned out, however, that in every other timeline they ever managed to discover through the device, where the characters made even slightly different choices, things turned out to be considerably worse for Earth. So keep that possibility in mind and forgive yourself for making bad choices. You can't change them now, and since you're watching this video, you're still alive with at least access to electricity. Whatever choices you made brought you here and are keeping you that way. Though maybe the road was rocky, perhaps you're still in your best possible timeline. So go forward, learn and make more choices, but don't agonize on those that have passed. But what if the choice that is giving you grief is still ahead of you? Well, let's try to simplify the process. With some choices that are just that low consequence, like picking a brand of instant noodles over another, wearing this hat or that hat for a casual walk, I think you can just toss a coin or roll a die, and that will be good enough. Although some choices, in fact majority of them, aren't that inconsequential. If between the choices you have there are outcomes that you possibly wouldn't like, think of a set of criteria that would exclude those choices. This I will call the hard criteria. Those are the ones that are important, and if the choice presented does not meet them, you reject it altogether without hesitation. But remember, this must only include the most consequential aspects of the choice. Don't get yourself stuck in uncompromising frame of mind over something trivial. So let's say you're choosing a family pet. You probably know the basics of what you want already. Let's say you want a dog. But what kind? There's like a bajillion dog breeds out there, so which one do you pick? Or maybe a mutt? Then the important question to narrow the criteria down would be, does your lifestyle facilitate an active dog, or are you looking for a couch potato? How big of a dog you want it to be, and how much are you willing to feed it? What will be its primary purpose? Guarding the yard? Emotional support? Or maybe occupying and entertaining the kids? It's things like that that I would call important. Now, if you have a set of breeds that all fit those criteria for you, then you can start narrowing it down with more inconsequential criteria. Maybe you'd rather have a dark-colored dog than a white one, so all the floof it'll leave around the house isn't so obvious. In fact, you'd rather have a short hair. And in the end, the choice will probably boil down to something like which puppy from available remaining breeds is the cutest. But because you've went over this process consciously in your head while deciding, you won't be stuck so much on which one is the cutest from the start. And you'll feel more comfortable rejecting other options because you'll know with how many things you've considered, you're likely not making a terrible choice in the end. It's also important to not lie to yourself while making choices. We can elaborate on the dog, for example. You probably shouldn't be like, I'm a couch potato who does not want to go on multiple mile-long walks, but man, the Siberian Husky is so adorable. I'm sure it won't cause problems if I don't give it enough activity. I'll just have to feed him less so he doesn't get fat. Or when choosing a life partner, don't be like, this attitude he has towards insert thing that is important to you here is unbearable. But I'm sure it'll be fine. He'll change eventually because he loves me. Now, when I put it that way, do you see how badly both of these could end? If you lie to yourself, you'll end up with situations when you know you're making a mistake, but you hope that the universe will bend to your dreams and fix it for you. Which never happens. I could say almost never, technically, but at this moment, I don't want you to think you could be the exception. It's another nasty thing that human brains do to justify dubious choices. They'll tell you, it's not gonna be like in the stereotype, because I'm special. You're likely not if you don't have very good logical reasoning on why you would be special. If you feel like certain choice you're making breaks one of the important, hard criteria you've set out for this choice from the start, slow down and don't dive headfirst into what you know in your own heart is a bad idea. That's what I think is the core advice for making good choices. Be honest with yourself and know what you want. Also, be honest with yourself on what you want, because that sometimes differs from what you need. Perhaps I should have said, know what you need to make right choices. Since I guess for some people, mistaking what they want for what they need can by itself lead to bad choices. It might be weird, but our instincts for what we desire often misfire. Just like you know that chips aren't healthy for you, you actually would really want some chips right now if you're being honest. And so, if what you want is not very reasonable, perhaps even knowing what you want, you should go more with choosing what you think you reasonably need, considering your circumstance. Like a dog that fits your lifestyle, rather than the cutest breed ever. Sometimes, though, this misalignment between what you want and what makes sense can create a dissonance in you, in which you think you're not happy with your sensible choice that so far has provided you with beneficial outcomes. It's just not what you really want, or at least that's how you feel. This phenomenon can poison the joy out of a good choice for you. And it's a common thing, really, but you need to be aware why. You need to be able to catch your brain on trying to be irrational and making you unhappy over something that is good for you, instead of something that just seems more desirable, but logically speaking is bound to cause problems. Following those irrational impulses isn't healthy, and while they might be quite pesky, I believe there are ways to fight them. Now, just a disclaimer, normally I would say pride as an emotion is detrimental, but just as with other proverbial deadly sins, it's the excess of pride that brings you down on moral level. Just like sloth is excess of rest, gluttony is excess in consumption. I will still use the word pride, however, to describe the self-satisfaction you need to develop in relation to your rational decision-making process in order to protect yourself from those irrational tendencies that can and will make you unsatisfied with a choice that's logically right for you. You need to be proud of sensibility of the choices you make. When you decide something using rational criteria, if you have that pride, you'll find it harder to regret those outcomes. Just don't get so proud that you start lacking compassion for the people who make choices less rationally than you. That's where the excess of pride begins. Saying that, there's one more factor we can use to boost our decision-making capacity that might not seem rational at first glance, but I promise you, in the end, it really is. And that is actively limiting the amount of choices you even consider. That's it. You don't need to know all the available options for something to decide. At least not all of them. When you make a list of important criteria for a choice, only then start looking through options. If you're buying a TV, don't check every TV every store ever ships to your location. Don't browse through every available option unless in that case your important criteria is the lowest price you can get. Just pick the first one that have specs that you want. Don't even look at ones that don't. Filter those out with the shop's search function. Why is that rational though? Wouldn't that mean that you can miss out on a better choice? But you see, the fear of missing out itself is irrational if what you're picking meets the criteria of exactly what you need or want. If it's good enough for what you need, then why would you want something better? And exposing yourself to more options can have consequences. As I mentioned in the first few sentences of this ramble, there were experiments conducted that proved that the more choices people were presented with in a store, the less they were satisfied with their final pick of a product, even though you'd think their choice would have been more informed. Why though? Well, because the comparison is a killer of joy. You've probably heard that one somewhere, but yeah, it is very true. The fewer options you have before picking something, the better for your brain, because if you browse too much, you'll find that the TV perhaps is too small for what you want, but it has that one nifty feature. And wouldn't it be nice to stack that on top of your previous list of criteria? I want that too. And then you find another TV that has something else you want, but not another thing. And in the end, your criteria list for what you want mutates into a Frankenstein of features you've already seen in other options, but those options lacked some of the other features, so you didn't pick them. And now you have that image of like a perfect TV that you want in your head. But this perfect quote-unquote Frankenstein might end up not existing or not being in your price range, which in turn, when you buy a TV according to your initial criteria that's more manageable, will make you inevitably sad that you couldn't have gotten something better. So what did the awareness or imagination of a better option give you? Just a sour taste in your mouth when it proved unachievable. And if you've picked the first good enough one, then stopped searching, you'd be more happy with the TV you end up owning. Now, TV is just an example. It can apply to any decision when you pick something, be it a vacation, an apartment, a car, a house, a boyfriend or girlfriend, a meal, or even a plant for your garden. The point is, majority of things in life are just mixed bags with some positives and some negatives to them. Do not end up thinking that there's this perfect bag out there that only has the sum of positives of every bag you've browsed through before. You really want to try to look through as little bugs as it is absolutely possible. Because in the end, not knowing what you're missing out on is not inherently a problem. You can't agonize over not having something that you never thought of having, as long as the choice you're making is sensible and frankly good enough for what you feel you need. In the end, life isn't really that complicated, and you don't need to find out all the things that are out there to know what you want. And don't let advertisement or other choices of information to always convince you that the grass is greener on the other side. It often isn't, and things that are better under some circumstances have problems under others. That's just how it is. And whomever said that the best is the enemy of good could not have been right enough. Because wanting the best only brings misery if in search of it we discard a lot of good. Well, the best might not even exist for all we know. It might just be a ball of criteria that you yourself glued together without ever seeing them go in that combination in real life. Now, you might disagree with me on that one, and that's okay, but for me I found perfection isn't the goal. I just want to be content with my life, and bombarding my brain with an array of stuff that have aspects to them I may want, I've always found to be pretty unhealthy. Because deep down, I know perfection stops existing when you keep piling and piling on additional requirements for it, based on all the things you don't have. If you too feel that way, give a video a like and subscribe to hear more of my takes. Or leave a comment if you beg to differ. I'd love to hear y'all's perspective on the topics. And for now, signing out and bye!